Today's case occurred in Hohhot City, Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, China. In the early morning of May 31st, 2021, in the morgue of a city hospital, the heartbreaking cries of the victim's family echoed painfully. The victim was a woman named Zhao Hong, and her relatives struggled to accept the reality of her death. Zhao Hong's eldest brother was especially devastated, as just over half a month ago, Zhao Hong had joined other family members to celebrate his birthday early. He still vividly remembered the joyful gathering, but now, the sister standing before him had become a cold, lifeless body. The more Zhao Hong's brother thought about it, the more something felt amiss. Zhao Hong was young, healthy, and had no known illnesses, yet everything happened so suddenly. Early that morning, he received a call from his younger brother, who told him that Zhao Hong and her husband, Ma Dongping, had a heated argument and urged him to come quickly. After hanging up, he immediately drove to Zhao Hong's house. However, halfway there, his younger brother called again, this time to inform him that Zhao Hong had been taken to the hospital. This deepened his suspicion that her death was somehow connected to her husband, Dongping. Dongping's explanation to others was that the night before, when he returned home, he and Zhao Hong had an argument. Following this, Zhao Hong drank heavily. Later that night, she suddenly experienced a heart attack. Dongping said he gave her medication, but her condition did not improve. He immediately called an ambulance, but by the time they reached the hospital, it was already too late. Zhao Hong's eldest brother found Dongping's account increasingly suspicious. As far as he knew, Dongping had been claiming to be busy with work recently and had rarely been home. So why did such an incident happen as soon as he returned? What puzzled him even more was why the ambulance bypassed a nearby hospital and instead went to a more distant one. Dongping explained that he had a doctor acquaintance at that hospital, which would make treatment and communication more convenient. With these doubts lingering in his mind, Zhao Hong's elder brother suddenly recalled something his sister had once said at the dinner table. If anything happened to her, it would definitely be because of Dongping. Thinking of this, his heart began to race, but he refrained from voicing his suspicions aloud, as his brother-in-law was no ordinary man. Ma Dongping, born in 1968, held the position of captain of the urban management team under the Hohhot City Public Security Bureau in the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. He carried the prestigious rank of first-class police chief. If he were indeed responsible for Zhao Hong's death, exposing the crime would mean confronting a powerful law enforcement figure. Speaking out prematurely could jeopardize efforts to uncover the truth. Zhao Hong's elder and younger brothers decided to discuss the situation and came up with a plan to prompt Dongping to call the police himself. After all, they believed it was unacceptable for someone to die in such unclear circumstances. The police quickly arrived at the hospital. After verifying the situation, the hospital confirmed that Zhao Hong was already lifeless when brought in during the early hours. At that time, there was a strong smell of alcohol on her body, but no visible injuries were found upon external examination. Therefore, the police concluded that this was generally consistent with Dongping's statement. Since there was no evidence to prove that Zhao Hong had been murdered, the public security authorities did not initiate a case. However, things were not as simple as they seemed. Zhao Hong's elder brother vaguely felt that Dongping was hiding the truth and suspected he was orchestrating everything behind the scenes. Why then did Zhao Hong tell her family before her death that Dongping would harm her? And why was her elder brother so certain that his brother-in-law had killed his sister? According to Zhao Hong's elder brother's recollection, Zhao Hong and Dongping were married in 2009. From the start, when the two first got to know each other, her family harbored concerns about the marriage. It wasn't due to their age gap, but because Dongping had already been married once and had a child from his previous relationship. However, Zhao Hong seemed entirely captivated by this man. In her eyes, he was the embodiment of success and power qualities that no amount of advice could dissuade her heart from pursuing. It should be noted that Dongping joined the public security system in 1990. Not only was he dedicated to his work, but he also studied diligently, earning a master's degree during his tenure. By 2002, in his early 30s, he had been promoted to deputy director of the Saihan District Public Security Bureau, an achievement few could attain. The promising career ahead was what ultimately won Zhao Hong over. Zhao Hong herself was also an exceptional woman. As vice president of the Inner Mongolia Women Entrepreneurs Association, she was not only beautiful, but also talented and resourceful. Although she was pursued by many successful men, her heart ultimately leaned toward Dongping. And so, a marriage was quickly arranged, even though her family still harbored unspoken worries. The early years of their marriage were filled with happiness. The birth of their young son transformed their romantic relationship into a warm family of 3. At that time, Ma Dongping's career was also on the rise. Zhao Hong believed she had found true happiness, but she could not have foreseen that a few years later, cracks would begin to appear in their seemingly perfect marriage. Initially, Zhao Hong only noticed that Dongping seemed to care less about her and their family. She reassured herself that this was understandable since her husband held an important position, which naturally came with a busy schedule and many social obligations. Zhao Hong fully empathized and never once complained. It wasn't until rumors about Dongping reached her ears that she realized the man who had always presented himself as upright to others was, in reality, a philanderer. From that point on, arguments began to seep into a home that was once filled with laughter. Until 2015, Dongping's extramarital affair was exposed by Zhao Hong. As a strong-willed woman with a prominent social status, Zhao Hong refused to silently endure the betrayal. She directly confronted the mistress and demanded she stay away from her husband. However, the confrontation spiraled out of control when the mistress not only refused, but also physically assaulted Zhao Hong, leaving her hospitalized. During this painful time, both physically and emotionally, the most bitter realization for Zhao Hong was not the wounds on her body, but her husband's attitude. Dongping not only failed to defend her, but sided with his mistress, accusing Zhao Hong of being unreasonable. When Zhao Hong sought legal assistance, her hope for justice was once again shattered. The case was assigned to one of Dongping's subordinates. It was clear from the start that the complaint would lead nowhere, its fate sealed as soon as it landed on the desk of the local police bureau. After this incident, Zhao Hong began to despair. Every time she argued with Dongping, she could not handle it rationally. One time in the middle of the night, Dongping intended to go out. Zhao Hong knew he intended to go find his lover, so she deliberately stopped him from going. Unexpectedly, Dongping disregarded the danger and jumped from the third-floor window. This incident caused the two to be cold towards each other for a long time, and from then on, this marriage became just a formality. At that time, Zhao Hong's family advised her to divorce, but she refused for 2 main reasons. On one hand, she couldn't swallow the humiliation of seeing the marriage she had worked so hard to build handed over to the mistress. On the other hand, her primary concern was her young son. Dongping's son from his previous marriage had suffered from severe depression due to his parents' divorce, and Zhao Hong didn't want her own child to experience the same. Despite the emotional toll the marriage was taking on her, Zhao Hong gritted her teeth and endured. After that, Zhao Hong stopped trying to control Dongping. She focused entirely on taking care of her child, convincing herself that as long as Dongping didn't cross any major boundaries, she would turn a blind eye. However, she couldn't have predicted that her leniency would only embolden him further. In 2019, strange and frightening events began to occur, leaving Zhao Hong increasingly uneasy. One evening, after dinner, she and her son suddenly felt an overwhelming drowsiness. The two of them slept through the night and didn't wake until almost noon the next day, causing her son to miss school. Zhao Hong had never experienced such an unnaturally deep and prolonged sleep before. On another occasion, Zhao Hong clearly checked before going to bed that the gas stove was turned off. Yet, the next morning, the entire house was filled with the smell of gas. She felt weak and dizzy, but fortunately, she managed to open the windows in time to ventilate the house, avoiding any serious harm. However, these incidents left her deeply unsettled, as though something sinister was creeping into her home. These unusual occurrences compelled Zhao Hong to confide in her family. Upon hearing her story, they urged her to divorce immediately. Still, Zhao Hong clung to the excuse of protecting her child and refused. She reassured herself and her family that she would be more vigilant and reasoned. With someone in Dongping's position, no matter how bad he is, he wouldn't go so far as to harm me and our child. Zhao Hong's reasoning seemed plausible. Everyone believed that as a law enforcement officer with a prominent position, Dongping wouldn't dare to commit an illegal act that could ruin his career. However, they underestimated him. Not long after, Zhao Hong's sudden and tragic death proved that he was capable of far more cruelty than anyone could have imagined. They speculated that Dongping's motive for murder was to remove Zhao Hong so he could marry his mistress, as Zhao Hong had firmly refused to divorce him. However, proving that Zhao Hong was murdered by Dongping would require concrete evidence, not mere speculation. Meanwhile, the police had yet to issue a case filing notice, raising the possibility that Dongping had already taken steps to influence the investigation. The question then became, what could Zhao Hong's family do next? During their interactions with the police, Zhao Hong's family noticed that Dongping repeatedly pressed for her body to be cremated as soon as possible. However, the family resolutely refused. Dongping's urgency only strengthened their suspicion, convincing them that he was trying to cover up the truth. Zhao Hong's brother proposed an autopsy to the police, but Dongping strongly opposed it, citing his desire to respect the deceased and allow her soul to rest in peace. In the face of this stalemate, Zhao Hong's body could only remain temporarily in the morgue. Faced with silence from law enforcement, Zhao's family had no choice but to seek justice on their own. Day after day, they tirelessly visited local complaint offices, even traveling all the way to Beijing, but their efforts yielded no results. Meanwhile, Dongping didn't remain idle. Zhao's family discovered they were being followed regularly, even when they went to file complaints. Suspicious individuals were seen loitering near their home at night, and a tracking device was found on one of their vehicles. The most dangerous incident occurred when Zhao Hong's brother was driving and was violently rear-ended by another car, causing the airbags to deploy. Fortunately, no one else was in the car at the time, or the consequences could have been disastrous. Upon exiting his vehicle, Zhao's brother recognized the driver of the other car. It was one of Dongping's acquaintances. This was no coincidence, but a clear and threatening message. The Zhao family immediately reported these events to higher authorities. Finally, the case caught the attention of relevant agencies, and plans were made to conduct an autopsy on Zhao Hong's body. At that time, senior officials from the Public Security Department approached Dongping, urging him to agree to the autopsy. They reasoned, "If you haven't done anything wrong, why not agree to the autopsy? It's understandable that your wife's family is suspicious. With the case unresolved, they keep filing complaints, which puts us in a difficult position. Once the autopsy is complete, the body can be cremated, and everything can settle down." Under pressure from his superiors, Dongping reluctantly agreed to the autopsy. 2 forensic facilities were proposed, and the first examination was conducted at the Inner Mongolia Judicial Center. However, the results were suspiciously flawless. There were no signs of homicide, and everything appeared normal to an almost implausible degree. The Zhao family, unconvinced, questioned the credibility of the findings and insisted on a second examination. This time, they placed their trust in a professional forensic facility in Beijing. The results of this second autopsy exposed a horrifying truth that left everyone involved stunned. The veil covering the crime was finally lifted. The second autopsy revealed chilling details. Zhao Hong's body showed minor abrasions, but they were insufficient to cause death, and no natural pathological conditions were found that could explain her demise. The most damning evidence lay in the toxicology report tests revealed the presence of ethyl methyl in her blood, liver, and stomach. Severe blood congestion was observed in various organs, especially the heart and lungs. These findings aligned with acute ethyl methyl poisoning, leading to respiratory and circulatory failure. Ethyl methyl, a highly toxic chemical, is strictly regulated in China and nearly impossible for ordinary individuals to access. So how did this deadly substance end up in Zhao Hong's body? This question pointed directly to someone with the power and connections to obtain such a substance, Dongping. The police finally identified him as the prime suspect. Considering his position, however, they chose not to publicly disclose the autopsy results to avoid alerting him. The case was reported to higher authorities, and the Ministry of Public Security dispatched expert investigators to Hohhot. A special task force was quietly established to handle the case. With the discovery of ethyl methyl poisoning, the investigation quickly turned to the origins of this toxic substance. In China, ethyl methyl is strictly regulated. Its production, transportation, and storage all require special permits. Given these stringent regulations, it was clear that Dongping could not have accessed the substance legally. The first clue came from the suspicious decision Dongping made on the night of Zhao Hong's death, bypassing the nearest hospital to take her to one farther away. Police swiftly contacted Dr. Wang, the acquaintance Dongping had mentioned. Upon being confronted by the police, Dr. Wang showed clear signs of distress. He admitted to giving Dongping a vial of ethyl methyl back in March, under the pretext that it was to handle large animals, a task ostensibly related to Dongping's professional duties. Dr. Wang explained that he had not thought much of the request. Although he was a doctor, he lacked the authority to procure ethyl methyl independently. Furthermore, due to previous medical accidents involving the substance, hospitals had significantly reduced its use in recent years. However, Wang's wife worked in a university laboratory and managed to obtain a vial for him. Dr. Wang emphasized that he had merely fulfilled a favor for a police chief, someone he considered a friend, and never imagined the substance would be used for murder. He then revealed more critical details to the police. On the day Zhao Hong died, Dr. Wang encountered Dongping at the hospital. Dongping pulled him aside and whispered a question. Would ethyl methyl show up in blood tests? Hearing this, Dr. Wang immediately felt alarmed. If Dongping had indeed used ethyl methyl to cause Zhao Hong's death, it would implicate him as an accomplice. However, since Dongping did not elaborate further, Dr. Wang refrained from probing. When the police prepared to conduct an autopsy, Dongping approached Dr. Wang again. This time he asked Dr. Wang to facilitate communication with officials at the Judicial Center's Forensic Department, expressing a desire to expedite the examination and report. Dongping claimed he was about to receive a promotion and wanted to resolve all personal matters beforehand. To ensure smooth proceedings, Dongping handed Dr. Wang a bag containing 100,000 yuan, about $15,000, in cash. The next day, Dr. Wang met with Liu, the forensic pathologist overseeing the autopsy at the Judicial Center, and passed the money to him. 2 weeks after the examination, Liu detected the presence of ethyl methyl in the toxicology report. Recognizing that this could be tied to a criminal case, Liu became wary. Before the report was finalized, Liu received a call from Dongping. Sensing the need for caution, Liu activated the recording function on his phone. During the call, Dongping provided detailed explanations about Zhao Hong's condition before her death, claiming that the couple had been intimate after drinking alcohol and that Zhao Hong subsequently experienced heart problems and took medication. Liu quickly realized Dongping's intention. He was attempting to steer the conclusion toward a natural death due to health complications. Despite feeling pressured by Dongping's authority, Liu reluctantly excluded the ethyl methyl poisoning findings from the report. However, he secretly preserved the recorded phone call as a safeguard for himself in the future. A short time later, Liu met privately with Dr. Wang to return the 100,000 yuan, a clear statement of his refusal to be complicit in the crime. With Dr. Wang's testimony, forensic specialist Liu's statement, and the decisive recording, the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. The police had enough to confirm that Ma Dongping had meticulously planned and executed the murder of Zhao Hong. Was Ma Dongping arrested without incident? What was his motive for murder? During the investigation into Dongping's social relationships, the police identified the mistress Zhao Hong's family had mentioned. Their findings revealed that on August 10, 2019, Dongping had checked into a hotel in Ordos, Inner Mongolia, with a woman born in 1994, 26 years his junior. The investigators followed this lead, discovering that the woman had stayed multiple times at a 5-star hotel in Hohhot. Surveillance footage from the hotel revealed that just 1 week after Zhao Hong's death, this woman was at the hotel with a visibly pregnant belly, estimated to be around 6 to 7 months along. The police expanded their investigation to maternity records at major hospitals in the city. Their efforts soon bore fruit. In September 2021, the woman gave birth to a baby boy at a local hospital's obstetrics department. The most damning detail was that the emergency contact number listed on the maternity registration form belonged to none other than Dong Ping. Zhao Hong's family's suspicions were entirely validated. Dong Ping had orchestrated his wife's murder because she refused to divorce him, clearing the way for his mistress to officially take her place. On July 13, 2022, after months of evidence gathering, the handcuffs finally snapped shut around Dong Ping's wrists at the gates of the Hohhot City Public Security Bureau, the very institution where he once wielded authority as police chief. That same day, Dr. Wang, the accomplice in this heinous crime, was also apprehended at the entrance of the hospital where he worked. Even as he was being arrested, Ma Dongping maintained a naive belief in the perfection of his murder plot. He was unaware that, throughout this time, the Special Task Force had been methodically compiling evidence, paying meticulous attention to every detail, knowing they were dealing with a high-ranking officer who had even attempted to bribe his way out of trouble. His misplaced confidence in his flawless plan crumbled as he was brought into the very halls of justice he once represented. In the cold interrogation room, faced with overwhelming evidence, Ma Dongping's final defenses collapsed. With a trembling voice, he began recounting the horrifying events of that fateful night. On the evening of May 30th, 2021, a heated argument broke out between Ma Dongping and Zhao Hong. Zhao, already intoxicated, grew increasingly emotional, eventually smashing a porcelain ornament in the living room. Dongping's attempts to calm her only fanned the flames of her anger, leading to even louder outbursts. In the chaos of that moment, a sinister thought took root in Dongping's mind, the intent to end his wife's life. If Zhao Hong were dead, not only would there be no one to fight Dongping for assets, but he could also openly marry his mistress without jeopardizing his career, a plan that struck 3 targets with 1 arrow. Moreover, with Zhao Hong having consumed significant amounts of alcohol, using ethyl methyl to incapacitate her could easily be disguised as alcohol poisoning after her death. Seizing the moment when Zhao Hong went to the bathroom, Dongping retrieved the hidden bottle of ethyl methyl and soaked a towel with it. When Zhao Hong emerged, Dongping attacked from behind, pressing the ethyl methyl-soaked towel over her mouth. Within a minute, Zhao Hong collapsed to the ground, completely incapacitated. Dongping quickly moved her onto the sofa. At this moment, their son returned home after playing downstairs. Seeing his mother slumped motionless on the sofa, he asked Dongping what had happened. Dongping assured the boy that his mother had simply fallen asleep after drinking and sent him off to his room to rest. Half an hour later, after confirming that his son was asleep, Dongping checked on Zhao Hong and found no pulse or breath. Realizing she was dead, Dongping noticed the faint scent of ethyl methyl lingering in the air. He opened all the doors and windows to ventilate the space. Once the smell had dissipated, he calmly called emergency services. Dongping then packed the towel and remaining ethyl methyl bottle in a garbage bag. When the ambulance arrived 15 minutes later, he went downstairs to meet the paramedics, discreetly disposing of the garbage bag in a dumpster. On the way to the hospital, Zhao Hong was pronounced dead, having shown no signs of life. Despite this, Dongping insisted on taking her to a specific hospital he had pre-selected, even calling Dr. Wang en route to arrange a meeting. Every detail had been orchestrated as part of a perfect play to mask Zhao Hong's death as a tragic accident caused by alcohol. However, Dongping underestimated the power of truth. Despite his influence and meticulously crafted plan, he could not escape the exposure of his crime. Driven by the unwavering determination of Zhao Hong's family, the police conducted a thorough investigation. Through autopsy results and the collection of extensive evidence, they gradually unveiled the grim reality behind the charade. On June 13, 2023, the Hohhot Intermediate People's Court held a hearing for the case. 2 years after Zhao Hong's murder, Her family believed justice was finally within reach. However, to their dismay, Dong Ping and his defense lawyer raised doubts about his confessions in court. The defense argued that Dong Ping had been tortured during interrogation and coerced into confessing. They claimed that the truth was far different. Dong Ping had acquired ethyl methyl from Dr. Wang for work purposes, and Zhao Hong's exposure to the chemical was purely accidental. She had mistaken it for disinfectant while bathing their pet dog. The lawyer concluded that Dong Ping had not intentionally killed Zhao Hong, and thus did not meet the criteria for premeditated murder. Furthermore, they contended that any evidence obtained through illegal means should be dismissed. Hearing this, Zhao Hong's family was furious. They couldn't believe Dong Ping would continue to fabricate lies despite the overwhelming evidence against him. Fortunately, the court was not swayed by these arguments. The court pointed out that prior to the trial, the authenticity and legality of all evidence presented had been thoroughly reviewed, and no procedural violations were found. On July 31, 2023, the Hohhot City Intermediate People's Court read the first instance verdict. The defendant Ma Dongping committed murder and was sentenced to death. At the same time, he also committed bribery of non-state employees and was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison and a fine of 20,000 yuan. Ma Dongping is currently appealing against this first instance verdict, but the Zhao family believes that justice will eventually prevail, and Ma Dongping will certainly pay for his crimes. This case is a painful lesson about the price of letting unworthy people hold public power, and it is also proof that no matter how powerful the wicked are, justice will still be served as long as we never give up faith and hope. And that is today's case. What will be the final verdict for the evil husband Ma Dongping? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next videos.